Just let me know.
All right, teammates, welcome back. If this is your first time listening to the Move Swiftly podcast, welcome to the number one show on innovative teamwork. Great to have you. To my regular listeners, you've hit the play button, which means you know exactly what goes down on this show, whatever the problems are in your life, whatever the challenges, whatever the obstacles, whatever is going on that may be in the way of your goals. We are here to indirectly tell you you are not going through it alone. Today, I have the founder of an incredible agency named L.O.I Agency, Miss Linda Ayoade, correct?
Hmm.
Yes, now me having the last name Crookshank, I make sure I make it a point to pronounce everybody's last name correctly because I know how that feels. I know the difficulties and when you have to correct people and all that, when you got to say your name with a little more feeling to people, I know that feeling very well. So I'm very, very respectful of that. And furthermore, whenever someone comes on the show, guys, you guys know, especially for you regular listeners, I tune in, I lock in, when they schedule, it's like, look, I want to learn everything I can about this person. And one of the things about Linda that really struck me in her speech, she gave a speech, she had a conference, and I'm gonna bring you on in a second. Just I gotta get this off my chest as I was, preparing for this interview is, she was giving a speech in a conference that she founded named the Wow Conference. And throughout the entire 30 minutes, maybe 30 minutes, might have been roughly a little more or less than 30 minutes, but she constantly referred to God in her journey, constantly, in every step of the way, whether she had the money, whether she didn't have the money, whether it was, look, God, helping this client didn't pay, whatever. Every single sense of the speech, you recognize the power of how God works and how that faith works in your business. So, all that being said, Linda, welcome to the show and appreciate you coming on.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Aswan. And I feel honored to be here and I'm excited.
Yes,
Yeah.
and the great thing is too, it was very impromptu. Like most of the work I do on this show, we've been doing this for now 2025. My goodness, we've been doing this for 5 years now. The Move Swiftly
Wow.
podcast started and during the COVID time, and it's been, every single day a new episode for the past 5 years, for roughly 5 years. And we keep everything impromptu. She didn't even realize that she had a podcast interview about 5 minutes ago, but her and her husband are so connected. They're so all in with the business, and it doesn't matter who it is. And this is what I want to challenge all you business owners listening to me now is to be willing to tell your story wherever, whenever the opportunity presents itself. If you're not ready in that moment, then you have a problem. There's still work that you need to be doing. That is to me, that's an important skill and an imperative skill for you to have as a business owner. So if you guys can tell, you guys already know, regular listeners know I spent a whole 72 hours screaming with my Michigan Wolverine fans. So forgive the sort of hoarseness in my voice. I'm working through it. I've been on about a couple cups of tea and I will be ready for tomorrow's live stream. So just forgive that for a second, but I want to bring things over back to you, Linda, for a second, because you had expressed to me just now before we started recording that something I didn't actually know is that you spent time as a college athlete. Now, this business that I started, this platform that you were on, was built around the concept of college athletics. I played for two college programs. One was a Division II program, and the other was an FCS programs. I also coached for 2 years, coached high school football for 2 years. I currently teach. I scouted college athletics. So everything I do is centered around the sport. And I'd love to hear your story a little bit in terms of some of the things that you learned in your formative years, like, from high school to college, some of the principles that were instilled in you that gave you such a powerful brand now in this drive to want to build your own business.
Well, thank you. I will say this. My career as an athlete really does reflect my career as a businesswoman, I would say, because I started off with a lot of the things that people wish they had but didn't really know how to use it. I started off with height, with the ability to jump, run, but
Okay.
my coordination and putting it all together was just zero.
Right.
So
Where'd you grow up?
in Dallas,
In Dallas.
Dallas,
Okay.
Texas,
Okay.
yes, specifically Richardson, which is a suburb of Dallas. But basically, I love sports, but I wasn't like really good at it. But I had the height advantage. I
Right.
was already about 6 feet when I was in the maybe seventh, eighth grade.
Okay.
So because I had already hit that height, at that age, they just wanted me for the intimidation factor. It
Hi.
wasn't really
Put her in the
because of
mix, go
skill.
get some boards and dish them out. I hear you. I hear you,
Yes.
coach.
And I used to hate that. I used to hate like
Mhm.
okay, she's tall, but we actually get why she's on the bench based on the warm up before the game starts. And I used to hate just
I grew
everything
up in
about that.
Maryland. I grew up in Maryland, so basketball was king out there. You know, the what basically
Mm,
we produce a lot of basketball players. So I know exactly what you're saying because every time now I was never actually good enough to play basketball. So I would always be the spectator. I was always the observer when it came
mm.
to basketball. So I know exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, that was and I played more basketball. I played volleyball mainly in college, but I played more basketball when I was in junior high, high school. So
Mhm.
it shocked me to play volleyball in college. That's just by the way. But
Yes.
growing up, I wasn't a good athlete as far as skill, but I learned that not wanting internally to be another like scary face, but doesn't really have nothing. I'll never forget there was a coach that said, "Oh, they got a real tall girl on their team, but don't worry about her. She ain't that good."
And you
Like they
heard
just,
that? You heard him say that?
yes.
Oh
And
no.
that's when I was younger,
You,
like
you can't.
coaches,
Right, right. You take that personal. You got to take that personal. Hell no. You
oh
don't.
yeah.
Right, right, right.
Definitely. And I mean, I got teased from other, teams. Back in the day, nobody cared about, hurting people's feelings. There was no like verbal bullying. People bullied you outright and they weren't scared.
Yeah.
So growing up, I got like teased every time just to kind of get me off. And I kind of played into that. But as I grew, I had to kind of get to a point, and this is where God really, I mean, it was around the time I actually got saved when I was in high school. He
Okay.
let me know that if I stopped looking at myself based on the ingredients that I have
Hmm.
and start looking to Him and what He's created me to be, I would achieve a lot more. And I really learned through my athletic journey how God takes the foolish things of this world to confound the wise. There was nothing
Hmm.
about me that really made me a college athlete until I really got to college.
So how does
It's just,
God do that? You got to walk us through that because that was
yes.
in the intro. Because again, as I'm listening to, and I do a lot of self-development work and listen to a lot of people speak, as if you couldn't tell. But
Mhm.
very seldom do we get the opportunity to hear someone that talks and you really feel like God is present in their speech. Like whether you're comfortable public speaking, whether you're on used to being on stage, you like it or not,
Mhm.
always going to be that element, that faith-based element that God is there
Yeah.
walking you through whatever new thing you may have. So walk us through how that sort of happened to you in high school.
That's a good question. Well, I will say this.
Mhm.
There was a pivotal moment
Yes.
that outside of athletics that ended up tying in. So I had a cousin that, and I'll fast forward this story, but it's important to know. I had
Yeah.
a cousin
There's no
that,
time limits, by the way. So do you think?
huh? You said say that
There's
again?
no time limits. So go ahead and do your thing.
Oh, okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Well,
You got to go.
yes. I mean, I'm okay for now,
Right, right.
Yes, but I had a cousin who had like a ruptured appendix and got to the point of death.
Oh no.
And that was the time not to get all kooky or woo,
Hey,
but the truth is I saw a vision.
there are people who've gotten to tears on this show. Multiple people have started crying.
Oh, wonderful.
So feel
Well,
free to any emotion. This is what we do here. We keep it raw and authentic.
great. Wonderful. Yeah, like I was saying, my cousin, he basically was on his deathbed. And for the first time I prayed. I mean, I've always gone to church because my parents took me, but this
Right.
time I prayed. It wasn't like it was coming from something outside of just now I lay me down to sleep sort of thing. And I was just like, God, heal my cousin. And he showed me it in a vision. And I ended up telling my younger sister, and she said she saw the same thing. So she starts describing it. I start describing it. I'm like, that is very interesting. And that was a time truly I received the Holy Spirit that day.
Yeah.
And since that time, things hadn't been the same. Like I got a gifting to write poetry. I got like there were so many things that happened all at the same time. And just my outlook on life. I used to struggle with a lot of self-esteem issues and just really feeling down. But everything started to change. And I noticed that my athletic journey was kind of paralleling with my life journey. It went from having all the ingredients, for something great and knowing that it's there, but God made me pivot into leaning on those ingredients, not for what I could make of it, but for what He could make of it.
Yes.
I I give people this analogy like, a vacuum doesn't a vacuum may look at itself and say, hey, I could be a blender, especially if it's like one of those Dirt Devil ones that have the little spinny thing, or Dyson that has a little spinny things. It could say to itself, hey, I could be a blender, and then start trying to operate as a blender because it has some kind of spinning, thing, and then get mad at itself because it's not operating as a good blender. But if it went back to the manufacturing, book that comes that says the directions of how it's supposed to be used, it will find out that it's getting down on itself for being a blender, but really it's a vacuum. It has a totally different usage.
Hmm.
So you're trying all these efforts to be a good blender, but you were never designed for that. I think a lot of people go through that, and I did too. I was looking at my height, and I was looking at, everybody saying, hey, you can jump, you could do all these things, and I was trying to manufacture it according to what I thought, you
You
know,
other people.
Exactly. What people thought and all that stuff, but truly it was going back to that
Hmm.
original handbook. It's like us. How many appliances do we have in our house that when we open the handbook, we're like, oh my God, I've been having this for like 10 years. I didn't know it could do that.
Exactly.
Like, and that's the beauty of reading God's word to find out where our identity is, because his his identity for us
Hmm.
a lot of times has a totally different, function
That.
altogether than what we think. So
Mhm.
I would say that translated into my career as well.
Yeah, and
Learning
well,
that.
first of all, you can't see it, but you're actually giving me goosebumps as you're talking because I'm thinking about, I was in eighth grade when I found out my father's kidney had failed. And this we
Mm,
were never a family that would go to church at all. My mother would always tell me, hey, look, that's something I want you and your sister to find out on your own. And that's
mm,
when I started having conversations with God. Forget about the nursery rhyme prayer. Now you lay me down to sleep,
yeah.
like it said. But hey, God, just look after my father, while he's on dialysis. And,
Mm,
ultimately he's still here with us. He ultimately
praise
got
God.
and all that kind of stuff. And that's when as I was continuing to develop in the word, you're right. It's a conversation with God. Forget about what the world wants. Forget about,
Mhm,
what you think you may be, or you may be too tall to be a girl or whatever. There's
mhm.
somebody out there that love you. There's all sorts of special things for you to have if you focus on exactly what my plan is for you, not what other people's plan is for you. And I
Yes,
bring
yes,
all
yes.
that up because you studied graphic design. And
Yes.
coming up in this world, that I personally pay a graphic designer to do all my thumbnails every 2 weeks.
Mm,
I never thought that was going to be something I actually paid for. But as you come up in this world, you never know, especially when you're in the college age and you're trying to figure out what you want to study. How have you seen the industry develop with social media, with now the use of thumbnails, with the now, the way we're conversing now? How have
yeah.
you kind of been able to leverage that into an agency where I believe you had mentioned you help clients get what, a couple $1 million? You're helping them with their, just their marketing and their overall brand. So walk us through that transition and that journey a little bit.
Yes. And there's many avenues to go about this, but this is one thing I'll say just to pour into your listeners. Things are changing, and I know I'm not answering
Every
the
day, man.
question.
Every day they're changing, man.
Yes,
I mean, this
but
AI thing, boy, if y'all ain't on it, y'all better figure something out.
yes, in our industry,
Right.
this is what big brands know that
Hmm.
most small to medium-sized businesses don't know. They use the vehicle of brand strategy
Right.
to literally get to where it's like adding this extra fuel
Hmm.
into what they do. I know this is probably not answering this
No,
question, but
it,
I
it
really
is
want.
because again, when you mention graphic design, and then that's the one thing that stuck
Yes,
out when I was listening to you is when you study graphic design in college, I could imagine
yes.
people were saying, "You ain't making no money doing that." Like, what do
Oh,
you do as a graphic designer? Like, I could imagine thousands of people just going to you, "That ain't gonna make you no money, girl. Go do some, just study some business or something like that." So it is
yes. Well,
answering it. You know what I'm saying?
I love what you said, and I'm gonna segue back to this, but I think this is very important what you just said.
Let's do it.
I'm Nigerian. Okay,
Uh-oh.
this is very important. There's a constant joke amongst Nigerians that you could be a doctor, lawyer, engineer, or family disgrace. Those
Uh,
are your options.
uh-oh.
Everything culturally, like if you hang around Nigerians, like they pretty much know that joke because any other field besides these high-powered,
Right.
fields that you automatically know that somebody's in that field is going to make some pretty good money,
Hmm.
they don't really recognize as an actual job or career.
Exactly.
So growing up, I've always had a love for art. I was the artsy one in the
Right.
family.
Yeah, you mentioned the poetry, right?
Yes, I'm one of six kids, and every one of my siblings is in the medical field but me. So there are four doctors, a nurse, and then there's me. So I'm totally like a black sheep, and I put that in quotes, but
Mm-hmm.
I really didn't want to be a black sheep. It's just that God designed me very different. I was not that kind of scholastic person, but my creative side is very strong.
Right.
Well, that again, that's that going back to the athletic journey when I was saying there's
Mm-hmm.
some things you can do, but knowing what you were designed to do is very critical.
Right.
When I was in college, I was introduced to graphic design. I've always been an artist. Like I was in an art magnet in my school. Like I mean, I'm painting, pencil artwork, oil
Right.
pastels, and all that stuff. But when I got to college is when I was introduced to the commercialization of graphic design, the kind that, when Apple's looking for a logo or when, all these bigger companies are looking to change their design. Well, what I had learned when I was in college was that field, as far as the knowledge of the power of not just graphic design, but branding. And this is very important. And I'll put this nugget in. Branding and marketing, people kind of clump them together as if they're one thing, but they're not. In fact, they're two separate things that if you don't know how they work together, they can actually work against you if you don't know how they function.
Right.
Branding is your what? It's kind of like the personality of when people are like, oh, that's my brand, people say, I'm my brand, or, your brand and all this stuff. But basically, it's kind of the personality of your business or organization or whatever you're pushing. It's that personality, that thing that makes people connect to it and every piece about it. So that's from the graphics. That's from the language. That's everything
Right.
about it. Like when you think Nationwide is on your side, there's a whole machine behind
Right.
that. If you think Chick-fil-A, like the cows eating more chicken and my pleasure and all that stuff, everything about that system
Right.
it's parts of what create that brand. Now, the advertising, that's the push. That's every avenue you use to push it, whether it's a billboard, commercial, ads online, vendor's booth, whatever. That's every vehicle you use to push whatever that is, whatever that brand is out there.
Right.
And I will say this, most of that information, as far as the industry goes, is gate kept amongst bigger brands. There are some smaller brands that get it, but most big brands, they're already functioning to pay for that first. Small
Mhm.
to medium sized businesses, don't really know the value of it. So they'll go on with business past a certain point, and then they're like, oh, yeah, I need a flyer. Oh, yeah, I need a logo. And it's kind of like hunting and pecking and choosing which one's a better deal. But the vehicle of the brand helps everything to move faster within the advertising. I know that was a lot, but I hope a
Yeah, I
little
mean,
bit of,
bring us to, I was just having this conversation because,
yeah,
again, I'm a college football guy, so I went to two
yeah,
ball games. And you had one which was the Pop Tart Bowl, and the other one was the ReliaQuest Bowl that used to be the Outback Bowl. And it was
Yes.
great because I had an opportunity to see up front again, the like you mentioned, the brand is the game. The people are showing up to go watch the Miami Hurricanes play Iowa State. The people are showing up to go watch Michigan play Alabama. The fans are there for the actual vehicle that's getting people out, but the marketing is all of the stuff around it, the stadium, the sponsors, the people that are going to make the shirts. Like I remember buying a shirt, a Michigan shirt, and the name of the company was, I think it was Intellectual Property for Teams. So they go to
Mm.
teams that have these big, already this big following, and they say, hey, look, let us just make your shirts, put your logo on it, and then cut you in and things like that. So, but the vehicle is the actual game that people are showing up to support their university. And that's kind of what you're saying in terms of when you look at the definition of a brand, it's think about, just look up the definition. It's one of the easiest things that you can do and understand it's something that stays and is a stick and it has a personality to it. The marketing, again, is going to come. And that's why I love the fact that you had mentioned everything's always going to be changing. However, your principles have to be really, really solid, or else people are going to just kind of move you out the way while they kind of put their own agenda to you and their own agenda. And especially when you talk about small businesses that aren't these
Mm.
giant Nikes and all that kind of stuff, they don't know the difference. And when you don't know the difference, eventually you will get removed by a bigger quote unquote brand. And that's kind of what you speak to, assuming that like when you are serving your clients.
Yes, yes. Most definitely. And there it's I don't know, I can't really say what it is, but I think a lot of business owners don't think their dreams are worth it to invest in it while it's small. I talk to a lot of small to medium-sized business owners, and they're like, "Oh, God put this business on my heart,
Yeah.
and He's been telling me to do this for
Mhm.
years, and
Mhm.
I know I'm being led." But everything about how they invest in it,
Right.
especially when it comes to communicating that vision, which the best vehicle is through branding,
Yeah.
they go very cheap. Everything is very like, well, my cousin could do it and I did it on Fiverr and there was that one guy across the street that he was having a special, like everything about
Hmm.
how they presented, you wouldn't know it's so wonderful.
Right.
You wouldn't know. Yeah. And it's one of those things where, and I tell people this, in our business,
Hmm.
one thing we are very passionate about is helping, especially believers. We help everybody, don't get me wrong, but especially believers, the ones that come, I tell them, look like where you're going, not where you're at. And we can help you do that
Hmm.
because you need to be people need to be able to catch on to the vision of this thing before it becomes the thing, to
Right.
be able to partner, and being able to look like where you're going is the easiest way to do that. But I do see a lot of business owners struggle in that area, and it's not always finance. I used to think it was finance. No, I think it's priority. It's like sometimes we may say we want something to be big, but deep down inside, it's a different picture. We're now weighing whether it's worth it in our choices,
Hmm.
but we say it's worth it, with our mouths,
Right.
if that makes, yeah.
Well, I mean, for anybody that's listening to, and I want to make sure I get you on the record saying this because what you're mentioning is absolutely true. It's absolutely a fact. There's tons of business owners out there that are making the wrong investments. And regular listeners have heard me say this thousands of times on this show. Just because you got a logo does not mean you're in business. Just because you got a bunch of likes on your social medias and all the other stuff, all the stuff that makes you look like you're in business, that does not mean that you have something that's going to stand the test of time. Your stuff has to be rooted in some level of faith. I'm not telling you who to believe in, like she had just mentioned. I'm not telling you any of that, but it has to be rooted in a level of faith where you're gonna have a solid principle regardless of who comes in. I strongly recommend the book Good to Great. He mentions the hedgehog concept where somebody comes and tries to poke at your business. You got to be like a hedgehog and say, "Yep, I ain't letting you come into my
Mm.
system." So, all that being said, who is someone that, in case they're listening, that you like ideally look to serve? Like, can you kind of describe your ideal client just in case they're listening and they want to hear more about how you can potentially work with them?
Yes, it's usually business owners, small to medium-sized business owners that feel stuck. you get to a point where if you haven't really invested in branding and building yourself as a brand,
Yes.
your marketing efforts will start not to have an ROI. They
Yeah.
kind of just maintain you. And it just does this. At first, it was working because no one just knew who you were and it was just nothing.
Yeah,
But then
and
you
not to
get
cut you,
to
but I want to make sure I give
this,
people an example, a specific example of that. When I put my first book out swiftly, it was around the time that this podcast had come out. I was working at a gym. I was a trainer at a
yes.
gym. So the books were flying off the shelves. I bought a whole box of them, and every member bought a couple copies. But after that, it hit a wall because I didn't have it set up to where I could be speaking. I could be selling them a package. I could be selling them a course with the book and all that. That's on my end was lack of a system. So when she mentions those small to mid-sized business owners that feel stuck, it's like, look, you've already gotten your peoples to buy, the people that you knew were the people that were gonna buy the stuff, the small ticket stuff. Now she's coming in and helping you build a business around that specific tactic that you have to draw people in. So I want to make sure I clarify that because I
No,
personally,
that's good.
yeah, I was personally exactly that person you're describing. That was me, and that's the cool part about it.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for doing that,
Yeah.
Aswan, because truly, I wouldn't have caught that. So I appreciate you doing that.
Yes, yeah,
That
and that's the thing with thought leaders, man. I know people, we've all been through it, and that's just part of life, man.
yes. Yes. And I will say this, that stuck part, and this is very important. It's not just brand, it's brand strategy.
Hmm.
Because you can build your brand and still have the same stuck situation, meaning that you have a logo, you have a website,
Hmm.
things look relatively cohesive, but there's still that stuck. Brand strategy is connecting how you generate income and how you grow in income and impact
Hmm.
as you communicate who you are. It's the making of a household name.
Yeah.
That's that level where you don't have to talk about your business, other people are.
Yeah.
So, for example, tissue. People say, hand me a box of Kleenex. We don't know if it's Kleenex. It could be Equate.
Yeah, that's
But
a great
yeah,
point.
you're saying Kleenex because Kleenex is a household name.
Yeah,
I used to think tissue was actually Kleenex. I thought that that's what it was. I didn't know it was a brand as a child. I
yeah,
thought it was tissue paper.
right.
That is the power of being a household name and using brand strategy as the vehicle to do it.
Yeah.
In your head, you start to connect things that are not necessarily connected.
Hmm.
Young kids these days don't know when you say apple if you're talking about a fruit or if you're talking about an electronic.
Yeah.
How is that possible?
That's
So,
Steve Jobs at his best. Actually, one of my favorite thought leaders, Seth Godin, the author of Purple Cow, he has a video
mm,
out there. He says this really well because, again, me, I'm a big sports guy, but he talked about if Nike were to go out and create a hotel, all of us can somewhat imagine what it would look like if you really
mhm.
thought about it. But the Hyatt or the Marriott goes and puts out sneakers, we wouldn't know it at all what exactly they would do. And when he made that analogy, it was like, okay, having a household name and again, having a name like Aswan Crookshank, your last name, all of that stuff starts to work to your benefit. And again, we're going to keep going back to these same principles. Talk to God and he going to give you
Yes.
powerful. He gonna give you like, hey, look, that's your
People,
brand, man. Use that thing because I gave you that, and that uniqueness is what's gonna be able to set you apart and build something solid for you. So, Linda, I could probably talk to you for hours, but I do want to be very, very respectful of your time. Can you just speak to people a little bit about what you got going on next? If you have any conferences, the books, and all that stuff that you have out now, the microphone is yours to go ahead and plug away.
well, thank you so much, Aswan. First of all, this has been wonderful, and thank you just for your time and
My pleasure.
just
My
being on
pleasure.
your show has been wonderful,
Yes,
wonderful,
my
wonderful.
pleasure.
One thing I would love to say to your viewers, and this is a word the God gave me a
Mhm.
couple of years back that I tell people everywhere I go. There is no competition in your calling.
Mm,
Most people feel competition is because they're not doing what they're called to do. They may be looking at someone else's calling to measure their calling. I
mm,
tell people that there is no traffic in the lane of one.
mm.
So find what you're called to do and brand that. No matter what your business is, find what your business is called to do, what you're called to do, and you'll never suffer from competition ever.
Hmm.
That's one. And then the next thing is we have a conference that's coming up in fall that really, really helps entrepreneurs not only to grow in wisdom when it comes to how they pursue their business, but it helps them to build off of biblical principles and how they pursue, how they get wealth. So it's built off of that principle of there's no competition in your calling, and also getting rid of that culture of I sleep when I die kind of life, where everybody's hustling, hustling,
Yeah.
and now your family's suffering and all that stuff. That's coming up in the fall. So if you go to www.livethewildlife.com, there's some information about our upcoming conference there. At least it's going to be there. It's not there yet, but it will be there coming up in October. And then also our program called Brandtastic Voyage. If you go on www.loiagency.com. You can see some of our work and also sign up for the program. Or if you go to IamLindaAyoade.com, you can also sign up for the program there, where we put businesses just like yours. If you're a small to medium-sized business who has gotten stuck, we put you in a brand incubation system that helps to give you the same foundation for your brand that all these Nikes and Chick-fil-A's and everything has, but in a quick system that allows for you to scale with. So if you go to imlindaayowade.com, and hopefully my name is, they'll be able to see my name on the screen and
Yeah, yeah,
ask.
I saw all this will be included in the show notes as well. So you guys not to
Excellent.
worry about, writing all this down right now. There'll be a link somewhere wherever you're listening to it, to just go and check out all the information. So, all that being said, Linda, the way I close out all the shows is I want you to use your imagination a little bit. You are, say, back in what, sixth or eighth grade. You're now getting into boys, but you're this tall, lanky girl. You're playing ball, but you're not, into it. You're just, doing it because you feel like somebody told you to do. Pretend that that version of Linda is here in
Oh,
the Zoom room. Give her some words of encouragement, and we will officially close.
I love that, by the way. I would tell that Linda, you're going to get there, but be ready to be comfortable being uncomfortable.
Hmm.
Yeah.
That's it. And if it's the first time listening, guys, you just know I close out with that question because I want to specifically target if you're that person that I targeted or that is that person going through that. Again, the promise of the show is to know you're not going through whatever it is you're going through alone. Oh, wait, you still had more?
Yes.
Oh, sorry, my fault. I thought you were done. My fault.
No, I just thought about something. You
Okay,
asked that question. I'm like, maybe a viewer may need to hear this.
go.
It's not about you being good enough. It's about God being big enough, and He is.
Hmm.
If you knew the God that you serve more than your insecurities, you'd never be afraid of anything that you think you can't do. He will give you the ability to do things that you can't do. That's what He likes to do. So, but yeah, that's all I wanted to say.
All right, I'll be giving you a space, man. You sure you got any more?
I mean, I got plenty more, but I know we're at our time. But I mean, I just, man, when you came with that question, boy, the
Yeah,
whole well came out.
yeah,
Like it was
yeah,
just like a well of just nuggets. I'm like, oh gosh, I wish
yeah.
I would have used the time to say some other things, but it's so hard with so many things.
Yeah, and the thing is too, nowadays, as we are now well in 2025 by the time this comes out,
Yeah.
is what we need is authenticity, virtual authenticity.
Yes.
It's virtual authenticity. And the world we have become so accustomed to that, you could look down on your phones and text and not have to have these soft skills. The authenticity that you guys are hearing right now, it's genuine, it's real. And again, the time is actually now. I get
Yes,
what
it
you're
is.
going through. I get whatever it is you may be going through in
Yes,
personal life. Listen,
yes.
we've all been there, the high school, the middle school versions. That's gonna feel like such a small part of your life when you really hit that purpose. Man, look, you're gonna start laughing at your former self. You've been caring about what some damn sixth grader said about you or some boy or some girl that didn't like you. So I appreciate your genuine authenticity. And you got to shout out the husband for scheduling this because if it wasn't for him,
Yes.
if it wasn't for him,
Thank God for my
you know what
husband, my
I'm saying?
boy
I didn't even know it.
Ayoade. He
I
is
thought it was
dope.
him that scheduled it, but shout out to the husband for making sure
Yes.
you get on the right platform. So, with that being said, I want to make sure I give you the update before we officially close. Is there anything else you want to add? I'll give you the last word.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I would like to say this. I know that there are a lot of people in, with all the political stuff and then wondering,
Hmm.
oh, what's going to happen with who's in the White House or who's not in the White House or how's this going to, affect me and things like that. But you said something that is very true. Right now, being your authentic self,
Hmm.
it pays and you will thrive.
Hmm.
This time that looks very uncertain, believe it or not, is actually good for everybody because I think people are realizing how much having real things matter. And when you serve a real God, you'll see him take really bad situations that seem like that's the reality and really show you the real reality, which is what he put inside of you is more than enough to navigate anything that you'll come across. And he is big enough to take you wherever, whatever you think is just so big, but it was laid on your heart. You're like, how am I going to get there? If he put it there, it's possible. If
Right.
he put it there, it's possible. So just don't worry about who's on the White House, what's going on the news. That's the news, but there's a good
I've
news.
actually, like, I've definitely lost friends over this election. I definitely have.
No,
I mean,
plenty of people did. I mean, marriages were wrecked.
yeah, it was, and I grew up in Maryland, so I grew up all around the political landscape. So yeah,
Yeah,
you're right. Once you put it on you, man, look, that means you have the ability to get rid of it. So, all
yeah,
that being said, fellow teammates, continue to move swiftly.
yeah.
We will talk more soon.
Yes.